Let's talk about making good tone. So tone is something really important to us as band directors. We want our students to make good characteristic tone, and we know that that starts with not only good posture and playing position, but also the embouchure. Now, some people have referred to the bassoon embouchure as even a non-embouchure because it's so relaxed, although there are definitely some things you're going to want to make sure the student is doing when they create the embouchure. You don't want to spend too much time talking about it, basically because overthinking means too much tension, and too much tension means they're probably that's one of the biggest mistakes to make in a bassoon embouchure. So just make sure that you're listening to them as they start to play. Make sure that they're making a good tone on the instrument. Have really high expectations for them. Now we're going to talk about how to form that embouchure, but just keep in mind your best tool to tell whether your bassoon player is playing with a good embouchure or not is just whether they sound good. And there's a big combination of air and embouchure called the air embouchure balance, which we're going to go over more. But just trust your ear, and if you don't have a good model for tone, make sure that you have one, but definitely make sure the student has a goal and has a model to listen to. There are a few recommendations below this video, but just for them to be able to listen to great bassoon playing as they are learning to play the bassoon is just a huge advantage. They know exactly what they're going for. So, the embouchure. I'm going to grab just my reed at first, and I'm going to do something really simple to create the embouchure. So I'm just going to say ew, and not ew. It's ew. First of all, the vowel is sort of like ew, that's gross, or spelled E-O-U-U, or tell them to say something kind of French, ew. And it's similar to maybe how you help other students form other embouchures, but what you're really looking for is a little firmness in the corners and relaxed, softer lips in the middle. So, ew, do. Then I just put the reed straight in. Now, right now, I'm not making a full crow, I'm making kind of a high crow sound. But let's talk a little bit more about the formation of the actual embouchure. So the overbite is one of the hallmarks of the bassoon embouchure, and that's another thing you don't want to overemphasize. Telling the student to pull their jaw back can really create a tense situation back here that they don't want. So instead, focus on the top lip is beyond the bottom lip. You can think of it that way. And it actually goes on, this is totally different from oboe playing. The top lip is going to go all the way up to the first wire. Okay, so the first wire and the second wire are the wires that you can, first wire and second wire are the wires you can see on a bassoon reed. And then there's a third wire actually under the thread here. But the first wire is where they're going to be basically touching with their top lip. So if they say do, and think top lip beyond the bottom lip, and that top lip goes in all the way to the wire, that's basically the right embouchure. Do. Now, you can hear there's some different sounds in that reed crow. Before we talk about the crow, let's just talk about air. You probably have some techniques for helping students use good instrumental wind. One of the useful strategies for bassoon is to think about a balloon that inflates and deflates. So telling the student to inflate first, and to help them focus on expansion horizontally, forward and back and side to side, and then just to deflate, let all that air out. They're going to need to be able to do that really relaxed exhale because they do need quite a bit of air to play the bassoon correctly and to play in tune. So one of the ways you can check that they're really relaxed is to have them block, and this is a good primer for tonguing. You can have them block the airstream by putting their tongue between their lips. So inflate like a balloon and put your tongue between your lips, and then try to exhale and deflate. And what happens is this. And then you can pull the tongue out of the way. But if the cheeks puff, then the throat is pretty relaxed. If the throat blocks off all the air back here and they're clenching when they go to exhale, then you know that they should try it a couple more times. So get them to puff their cheeks and that throat is nice and open. That way when they're actually exhaling and deflating that air, it's really freely flowing out because they're going to need quite a bit. You can use your own tricks there, but that's a good one for bassoon. And sticking the tongue between your lips is a decent primer for having some tongue motion to release the air when you play the bassoon. The tongue doesn't go out that far, but we'll get there when we talk about articulation. So, the crow. Now, first of all, it really matters that you have a good reed. This is a pretty decent one. This is a Jones reed that I adjusted a little bit. So what you're looking for is a good crow with mixed sounds. If it really doesn't ever crow or really only makes a high sound or a low sound, you probably have a reed problem. And we're going to talk about reed adjusting a little bit later as well. But what you're listening for is partially this high sound. And then you want some of the low sound. And so if we get it somewhere in between and we hear a mix of those sounds, that's the crow we're looking for. So I probably need to do a little more work on this reed and practice my own bassoon embouchure. But you're looking for that mixture of high and low sounds in the crow. If the student can't find the place where the reed is supposed to crow, which is also going to give you a good sense of whether they're using the right amount of lip pressure, then you can do what's called the bomb drop. So that is where you start with more lip pressure, and we talk about these lips as soft cushions for the reed, so that way, especially if they're coming from clarinet or saxophone, they're not biting down. Do soft cushions, top lip beyond bottom lip. But you can start with more lip pressure and get that high sound every time. And if you relax slowly and slowly draw the jaw a little more open, which is another good part of the bassoon embouchure, you want to have your jaw open, then you can hear the sound drop into the crow that you're looking for. So that one went all the way to the bottom. I'm going to see if I can find the crow right in the middle. That's what we're looking for. It's kind of an interesting sound. So, again, to review the embouchure, we say something like do, or if do isn't working right, they could say do, or they could try to whistle. Each of those gets the lips in basically the right formation. Top lip beyond the bottom lip. And keep an eye that their jaw is open, chin is flat, and they're using their lips as soft cushions on the reed. So create that embouchure, put the reed in, and then make sure that they've practiced that inflating and deflating so that they have a good strong airstream going out through the reed. So that's some basics for generating a tone using good embouchure and good air. Okay, so for good tone on the bassoon and to play in tune, students need to understand there's something called the air embouchure balance. And the issue here is that you can make a tone on the bassoon with way less air than the instrument actually requires. And the effect of this is that the pitch will be low. So even though you're looking for, if you're playing on the reed and the vocal, for instance, to work on tone, and you're working on a relaxed embouchure, trying to get that C pitch, or lower, then a student can kind of accomplish that by backing off on their airstream. And when they go to the instrument, pretty much everything they play will continue to be flat, and they will compensate with the other side of the air embouchure balance, which is embouchure. So if your air is wimpy, then the embouchure ends up firming up and creating a lot more lip pressure, and then we have the dreaded pinched tone and just pinched overall reed. And eventually you're going to look at that student's reed and the tip opening will be completely closed. So how do we avoid this? Well, you have to make sure a student understands that the air embouchure balance exists and that they're in charge of managing it. So more air is going to raise the pitch and less air is going to lower the pitch. So I'm going to play a C, and I'm going to play it with just enough air to make a tone. Sounds okay to me. I'm a new student. And then if you can get them to play with a lot more air at once, there's a remarkable pitch difference. Not enough air. And I'm particularly trying to make sure that I'm using a little bit less lip pressure on that second one, on the higher sound, because I'm doing it all just by increasing the air, not by pinching my lips. So the basic idea is more air, pitch goes up. Less air, pitch goes down. More lip pressure, pitch goes up. Less lip pressure, pitch goes down. And that's really, that less lip pressure is really what you're working on when you play reed and vocal, to make sure that their embouchure is relaxed. So in order to do that, whether you're on the bassoon or the reed and vocal, you need to make sure that they're using a good amount of air. Make sure that they know how to use an instrumental level of breathing and air. So as you change registers, then the air embouchure balance changes with that register. So the most simple way to think about how that changes is to understand something about voicing in those different registers on the instrument. So when we're talking about the different notes of the bassoon, we'll also go over a little bit about which registers should be voiced with do or do or D. And that's going to help them adjust the air embouchure balance as they move around. And then they have to be able to use their ear, okay? But just be aware that the air embouchure balance changes. Now, there is a decent baseline. So to help a student understand the importance of air, you can teach them that the air embouchure balance at a basic level is 60% air and 40% embouchure or lip pressure. So really make sure that they understand air is their basic tool for playing the instrument. And then the embouchure is just there to maybe adjust the pitch a little tiny bit here and there, and also make sure that the reed is responding appropriately. But it really needs to be more about air and less about the embouchure. Now, when you change dynamics, you can imagine that can make things a little bit challenging. So we'll talk a little bit more about playing dynamics when we talk about intonation. But the air embouchure balance is something any bassoon player needs to be aware of, and so give them a good baseline education about how that works and about how their air and lip pressure will adjust the pitch as they play. It's a good way to prevent them from just pinching everything right off the bat. This is something worth pointing out to someone who's already a good musician. So if you're switching a high school musician who's been playing for a few years and has a decent ear, they're going to want their pitches to be in tune. If they're playing a major scale, they know what that sounds like, and they're going to make it happen. But if they don't understand how much air the bassoon needs, then they're going to start automatically pinching here, and they're going to get the pitch that they want, but the tone is going to be really pinched. So it's really tempting, and if you're practicing the bassoon, it's a pretty good chance you'll start to do that as well if you're new to it, because that's what we want as musicians. We want our notes to come out the way we expect. So you've got to have that baseline understanding that air is the dominant supporter of pitch and tone, and then the embouchure goes along with that to help. So the air embouchure balance, big deal. Make sure you know it.